Good morning. My name is Carroll, and I'm an assistant professor of history at Rochester Institute of Technology. And I'm currently completing a book called Mobilizing New York: How Women Shaped Community Activism from the War on Poverty to the AIDS Epidemic. I don't actually write about ACORN specifically in that book. The groups I study are Mobilization for Youth, the National Congress of Neighborhood Women, ACT UP, which is the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, and WHAM, Women's Health Action Organization. But I'd like to thank Marisa for organizing this panel, and I'm honored to be speaking alongside such distinguished speakers. So I will draw a little bit on my own research in terms of thinking about what made ACORN so effective. So just to add on a little bit to what Fred just explained, ACORN began with the identification of mutual needs in a neighborhood or other local group setting, and then organized around specific issues that resulted in concrete improvements in poor and working class people's lives. They did not use an ideological litmus test. They recruited local leaders, but they also used outside organizers. And they engaged in cross-class collaboration as well as multiracial organizing. Equally important, ACORN linked members and chapters at the local, municipal, state, and national levels so that they could participate in local community building relationships, and addressing local issues, but then also addressing problems that require national level solutions. And so in this way, they remind me of the women's club movement of the progressive era in some ways. ACORN provided services to members, as well as, and because they came in sometimes for services, they then received a political education, some members, and went on to take part in collective political action. Some specific things that ACORN achieved that I don't think historians have incorporated into the narrative as much includes the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act and the Community Reinvestment Act, which made it much easier for local groups to fight banks on the issue of redlining and to get money to invest in low-income neighborhoods. The living wage in dozens of cities, ACORN succeeded in getting living wage ordinances passed, and bringing the issue of fairness into discussion, economic justice and fairness into public consciousness, as well as raising the minimum wage in a number of states. So those are just some of the many things that ACORN accomplished. I agree with Fred that they've been targeted because they were so effective, also because they registered millions of low-income and minority voters. And we know that there's an active attempt to suppress voter turnout, particularly in low-income and minority neighborhoods. Attacking them was also a convenient way to target President Obama for partisan political purposes. But I think more broadly, Glenn Beck and others have targeted not just ACORN, but also Saul Alinsky and Piven and Cloward. And they have sought to undermine the legitimacy of collective action on the part of the poor and working class by labor unions as well as community groups. And I think that this, unfortunately, some Americans have been amenable to this critique, in part because so few Americans participate in labor unions today, or in other organizations where they participate actively in governance, where they get to make decisions about what the group will do, and those decisions impact their lives on a daily basis. So there's, in my opinion, a widespread misreading of history regarding the essential role of conflict in driving progressive social change. And this has allowed for the demonization of ACORN and other groups in which poor and working class people stood up for themselves and took action. I remember listening to the debate over Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker's attempts to end collective bargaining rights for public employees. And one person who was interviewed on NPR said that labor unions may have been necessary in the early 20th century, but we don't need them anymore because we have laws ensuring a 40-hour work week, a minimum wage, et cetera, et cetera. So there's also a misunderstanding that if you don't continue to mobilize and protect those rights, they will weaken and erode, and that has in fact been the case. And the working conditions for many Americans have deteriorated in terms of wages and hours worked. So I think that this distrust and disregard for the use of conflict has weakened our sense of citizenship, so that engaging in protest is not seen as part of what it means to be a citizen in a democracy. I also think, though, that ACORN provides a really hopeful lens for thinking both about the history, about the past, and the future, because it reveals that people have a real desire to participate in collective action, that they enjoy taking power, exercising power, and feelings of solidarity, that those are extremely powerful, that there's a real hunger for them, that in fact Americans are not so divided by what some of you have termed cultural issues, that they cannot come together to work collectively on areas of mutual need. So I think we'll see more of that in the future. I also think we'll see historians rethinking a split, which has been in evidence in this conference in some ways, between discussions of political economy and then discussions of community organizing, as if those two things are separate, and as if issues like daycare are cultural issues and not issues of political economy, which I think maybe we can talk about that more later. Thank you.